Well, currently, the official unemployment rate in South Africa stands at 32.5%, with the unofficial rate likely to be much higher. It has resulted in many people now having to share their paychecks with family and even friends who no longer have any source of income. There are some initiatives, such as Money Smart Week, which is an online initiative taking place to help people manage their funds better. But as supported by our next guest, one just has to learn to say no. Lyndwill Clarke, this is where you come into the equation. He's the head of consumer education at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and he's here to hopefully educate us a little bit more. Good to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Lan, and good morning to all the viewers.
All right, so I'm going to get into the word no in a short while, but I suppose we should start off by asking, how do you actually go about defining Money Smart Week? In the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, there's record unemployment levels. People are basically using their last cent for basic survival at this point.
Yeah, I think, Leanne, at this stage, knowing more about your finances and your money matters is actually quite vital, especially during this time. Money Smart Week was initially initiated back in 2018 when the National Consumer Financial Education Committee got together. It's chaired by the National Treasury, and it's got various members from industry associations, NGOs, government departments, labor unions, etc. And it's an initiative that we decided that the whole financial sector can actually come together, I think maybe for one of the first times, to actually concentrate on a topic that is so vital for the economy in South Africa. We believe that if consumers are financially literate, they can make much better financial decisions about their own matters, about their lives, and about their family situations. So Money Smart Week is an initiative which started on Monday. It runs from the 22nd to the 28th of March, and it will run virtually on a platform called www.mswsa.co.za.
So where does one begin with financial education when we're talking about the burden of those earning an income assisting those who do not? Because that is a very common culture here in South Africa. And I imagine over this particular time it has become even more that people are dependent on others for survival.
Yes, indeed. We've seen, due to the lockdown measures and COVID-19, people have been losing their jobs. They've taken salary cuts. And I think this is the time where you really have to take stock. What is your family situation? What's your personal situation? How can I assist my family? But also, if I do want to take out a financial product, especially when it comes to credit, who do I actually speak to? And this is where we like to promote the authorized financial services provider, as we call it. You need to be licensed by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority to actually sell a specific financial product. And then, of course, with the National Credit Regulator, if you want to provide credit to any consumer. And this is where we would like to warn consumers to be very, very careful if you enter into a loan agreement with an entity which is not regulated by either the NCR or the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. I think that's very vital, because there's obviously no recourse mechanism if you do go and lend your money from a mashonisa, as we call it.
Yeah.
And you obviously the interest rates are much higher.
Yeah, and that's a fact. And people do get lured to borrow money, and then at much higher interest rates. And then obviously that just gets you into deeper trouble. And then you get a blacklist against your name, and the chances of you getting anywhere, I mean, either a job, bank account, store account, buying a car, a house, nothing, everything goes the moment your name is blacklisted. And I'm not sure people understand that, because you get very blinded by the debt that you're in, and you are desperate for this money. So you'll turn to anyone or anywhere that is offering you money. I mean, this must be something you see all the time.
Yes, indeed. And it's actually quite sad, because it sort of perpetuates the whole cycle. Because you then borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and then eventually you get yourself deeper and deeper into debt. And I think as South Africans, we already have a little bit of a low savings culture. And that is why this is the time now with Money Smart Week, where we provide you with unbiased information on a platform that's basically free to everybody, as we've provided a zero-rated kind of site where you can get information free of charge at any time during this week. And if you don't need more information, there's obviously contact details for you to ask questions after the programs has run.
Yeah, good. What has your organisation noted about the main financial challenges that South Africans are facing right now?
I think you've just mentioned it at the start. Unemployment is one of the biggest challenges. You cannot manage money if you don't earn money, obviously. And I think as part of the whole socioeconomic development, you can't see the financial literacy just in isolation. We have to look at various programs where we can actually upskill, provide information around small business development, entrepreneurship, because creating jobs has become a challenge for us. And this is where we say, look at your finances, look at where you are at the moment. Get into a program which also provides a financial education or financial literacy aspect, so that when you do get into a job, when you are employed, you have the necessary skill to actually deal with your finances on a more informed basis, and then make the right decisions for yourself as well as for your family and those that you have to care for.
So, Lyndwill, a very important point to note is you know, we have spoken about these lenders that are out there that offer you loans, and you fall for them because you are desperate. Now, let's talk about proper registered loan people that are in the industry that do offer loans, and yet they make it almost impossible for somebody to take out a loan. I mean, you go the right route, you do everything that you possibly can, and yet to qualify for a loan has to be one of the most difficult things. You think you're doing the right thing, but they just will not allow you. I mean, this goes the same for buying a house or anything else, because it is just impossible to meet those requirements. So you land up going the route of these guys that just take advantage of you. Can we not look at how these lenders need to have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to loaning?
Yeah, no, indeed. I think sometimes we find that there are certain barriers to enter into the economy and to actually get a loan. I think it's better if we should speak to the National Credit Regulator around these issues. But I also think what is important here is that we need to set goals. Sometimes we tend to just want to get credit just for any kind of thing. But within your own personal life, you need to set some goals. Why am I borrowing the money? Why am I lending the money? What is it actually for? And then speak to an authorized financial planner or a financial advisor. And I think this is quite the important thing, because we often take advice from people that are not really qualified to give us advice on how to go through the process. I must admit the process is sometimes very tedious, but we have to have checks and balances in place in the system in order for people to actually qualify for these loans. Otherwise, if we don't do that, what inevitably happens, eventually you cannot service the loan, which means either your possession that you purchased or your goods or the service that you purchased will have to be taken back, or you have to go on debt review. So I think the checks and balances is there to safeguard everybody, so that at the end of the day, you don't get to a point where you say, but now I can't service my loan anymore. And we've seen the credit statistics. About 47% of South Africans can't currently service their credit loans. So I think it's important, Leanne, that we need to make sure that what our goals are, but also that when we do enter into that agreement, that we go for the full distance, that we will be able to cover the distance or the credit that I've taken out for the full period of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the exact reason that people get themselves into trouble. And I mean, if we just take the situation now, I mean, look at students that are desperate right now to go to university, and they can't be registered because the money has not been paid, or parents are desperately wanting to try and fund their children to go to university, but they can't. And the reality is that you do turn to these places that'll give you an unsecured loan, and then you get in over your head. So we know what the rules are, and that's the reality. We know what the rules are, and we know what we're doing by getting ourselves into trouble. But sometimes you're in such a desperate situation that you'll do anything. And, you know, I fear, is the story of a lot of people right now.
And I think at that point, what I'd like to call sanity should prevail. You should actually do your homework. And I think this is what Money Smart Week is all about, that we want to provide consumers with all the information before you make those choices. Because I know desperation leads to desperate measures. So before you actually get into that desperate measure, make sure that you find out all the information that you can around these situations. It's a trying time. A lot of people are wanting to go to university. So make sure that you contact the relevant people, the people that can give you the unbiased information. And I use the word unbiased because sometimes people give you information just to sell you a product. And eventually you end up not being able to service that product. Yeah. So I think for me, from our side, I think it's important that you speak to the right people. Indeed. And especially people that are authorized within the regulated environment.
All right, let's talk about black tax, the tricky and often taboo issue of black tax. And I know in the introduction, one of the words that I used and the phrase was just learn to say no. Again, I think we're simplifying this too much. How do we get around this?
I don't think we can. I mean, personally, I think from a cultural point of view, it is an accepted practice. It is not just in South Africa. In fact, in countries like New Zealand, they call it brown tax. So we need to actually, as families, and this is where we're trying as far as possible to promote family budgeting. It's quite important that you sit down with your family and talk to your family about your finances. When I grew up, it was taboo. You don't speak to your father or your mother about how much money they're earning and how much money they can actually give to you to buy something that you really want. And we talk about children's wants becoming the parents' needs. So you actually put your family in such a situation that you are actually that the parents are actually forced to pay for something. But our extended families, and this is, I think, the result of our economic situation in South Africa, our extended families are more and more depending on us or the breadwinners to actually provide for them. Yeah. And at some stage, we need to sort of think about how do we get around this? How do we actually educate more within the family so that there can be more income to provide for the family? And I think education plays a great role here. Instead of us just providing all the time, because at some stage the money will run out, and then the whole family is then maybe in trouble, or the extended family. Yeah. So I think it's something that really needs to be talked about within families.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, there's so many issues that can be discussed at this point. I mean, if we also talk about the amount of people that, you know, unfortunately have lost their lives due to coronavirus, or just in general, we're seeing a lot of excess deaths happening here in South Africa, around the world as well. And people have not got the correct policies in place, and they find themselves with a lot of debt. And of course, that debt is then passed on to their next of kin. And to try and get out of that debt is also a very, very big problem. I mean, I may be making a sweeping assumption, but do you think that South Africans are knowledgeable when it comes to their financial education? Or do you think a lot more needs to be done?
No, definitely. A lot more needs to be done. We often use the term, people don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And I think that therein lies the rub. That we should, and this is what Money Smart Week is all about, I think, trying to educate people, trying to provide them with that information. Because you come to a situation where you sit and you say, but I'm in debt, I don't know how to get out of it. You do need to know, who do I contact? And I think that is quite important, that you know, who do I turn to in times of need? How do I go to somebody, and who do I speak to if I want to plan my financial future securely? And this is, of course, where our authorized financial planners come in. Last night, the Money Smart Week has a power hour. Last night, between 5 and 6, there was an excellent panel that actually spoke about investments, spoke about how do you manage your personal assets. And I think that is quite important when we do get into a situation when I think about my money. And yet again, I'm one of those people that said, this is my money. I'm not just going to hand it over to anybody. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to talk to knowledgeable people, people that are authorized and are actually qualified to give me that kind of advice in terms of my own money. And yeah, I think the more kind of initiatives that we have, this is just 1 week that we are having, but I think it should be happening on a daily basis. Yeah. Too many of us take out a financial product, we sign the agreement and we put it in the cupboard somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you have to constantly, on a regular basis, check your portfolio, check your investment. Where is it going? Speak to your financial planner, speak to the institution that sold you the financial product, so that you stay up to date with what is the eventual payouts going to be, what are the benefits. And this, Leanne, just to move to another topic, is especially important on our retirement. A lot of us belong to retirement funds, but we don't check our retirement benefit statements. Will it be enough when I do retire? Will my payout be enough for me to live on for the rest of my life when I do retire?
I mean, these are big questions we need to ask ourselves. We really do, because, I mean, another issue which we haven't even touched on, and we don't have time to do it, is people having their wills in order. And, you know, when you look at the amount of people in South Africa, I don't even know if most people have a will, a working will in place. And, you know, that's something I think is we're going to have to reserve it for another time. There are also people, just finally right now, that... I mean, I just look around where we're working at the moment, and that's just one institution, the amount of people that have been retrenched and may be getting payouts at this time, and that's for companies as well. Some may find that they want to spend all that money, but I suppose the right thing to do is invest it. You know, that's that last bit of advice I'd like from you.
Yeah, so I can't give you advice. I'm not a financial advisor, unfortunately, but I think you need to speak to an authorized financial advisor. And this is quite vital, that you get the right information, because like you said, the urge and the temptation is there to, I've got this lump sum, let me go on a holiday, let me buy a new car, etc. But again, the money's got to last you. If you are not going to find another job, the money will have to last you for the rest of your life.
Indeed.
And once you've paid out your debt, where do I go to? What do I do with that money? And here is where you need to do your homework. Where do I put my money in?
Lyndwill,
and also,
I have to leave it there. I have to leave it there. I'm looking at the time. We've got just a few seconds. You've been great. Thank you. I think you've given a lot of advice this morning. But I've got to quickly say goodbye from both of us as we wrap up on SABC2.
Indeed.